One of the restaurants that I used to supply to wanted to sell. So I decided to just bid. And I knew they were asking for, I remember 18 million. And of course, account yangu ile naangalia niko na 40k. 18 million na 40k. Having grown up with that poverty, I hated it. So I created a very strong saving culture from the beginning.
Business. My name is Ian Dennis and I'm quite excited about the show that you have lined up tonight. Tonight I have a guest who has actually been featured on a book I've written quite earlier on a chapter called The Power of Broke. And our guest tonight is going to demystify what exactly, or rather how exactly is it are you able to build your business from nothing and be able to establish a big brand in the city of Nairobi, where it's literally hard for so many businesses to literally survive. Before I get to introduce my guest, I'd like to let you know that we are here at the Capital Club, the place you need to be as an entrepreneur. Within the Capital Club, there's an array of so many different activities you can actually get to do if you're part of this particular club. There's the gym, there's the spa, there are meeting rooms. There's so many events organized each and every week to help you as an entrepreneur in your journey to not only network, but also get to learn. The guest that I have tonight is Obado Obadoh, the only gentleman with two names. And it's not the governor I'm speaking about, but the proprietor of Café Deli, one of the leading restaurants here in town. So Obadoh, thanks so much for coming to the show.
Thank you.
Uko salama kabisa? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, man.
Before even we start the conversation, what exactly are you most grateful for today?
Well, the thing I'm most grateful for is the fact that Café Deli is still standing, and we have been able to maintain our staff way after COVID.
Interesting. And you've seen that particular, I think you've seen this wave from, because I know during COVID so many restaurants went down.
Oh yes, it was a very difficult time. And of course we are still struggling, but with the fact that we are still standing, and of course recently we added another chapter in our book, where we're happy that we're still expanding even though things are tough.
Interesting. And I know it's such a tough period that you are in, considering there's so many different policies that are coming into place. That's going to be, some can consider it punitive for the businesses. But at this particular point in time, what's it called, in reflection of where you've been from, how do you reflect where exactly the journey is heading to?
Well, we expect this year to be a very tough year. We of course anticipated it, and we've done the best we could do to mitigate those issues. But going forward, probably next year will be a good year if we manage to get
through this year.
We are of course anticipating the new bill coming in, and if it does, of course, it's going to shake up a bit of the industry, because the industry is still struggling from COVID. We are yet to get to 70–80% of what we used to do before COVID. And of course, even the staff that we had at then, we have only managed to get them to 100% pay this year.
Wow!
So you can imagine if this bill comes into effect, we may have to either revisit talking to our staff and managing the costs in a way like probably salary cuts, or we may be forced to cut down the number of staff we can be able to shoulder.
Interesting. We have started off on a very dark note, considering where we are in the situation of the country. But the toughness that you are in is the toughness that forms your background growing up. So maybe we can just take it back, because I know you've grown up in just a very difficult environment. Maybe you can just paint us a picture, because right now we can see the successful Obadoh, who has so many different particular chains of restaurants, doing quite well despite what exactly is going on. But growing up, you grew up in a very difficult environment. Just take me through, where did you grow up? How exactly was your upbringing?
All right. Well, I grew up in a village in Budalangi. Of course,
the Budalangi, the famous places with floods.
Yeah,
I'm surprised you put an umbrella.
Well, the Budalangi that you hear about in the press and you hear about is very different from the Budalangi I grew up in. Anyway, I never saw floods in my village growing up.
I think the media always portrays a particular image because when you hear Budalangi, we always just know floods and problems.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is that Budalangi has two sides, the south and the north. Now, the north is hilly and the south is plain. And that's, of course,
where the flooding.
Yeah, the flooding happens.
Yes.
So when it's been generalized to look like the whole Budalangi is a flooding area. But I grew up in the north of Budalangi, and growing up was, of course, very difficult because the poverty levels there are quite high. And the only thing we knew is the true village life. Right? So you wake up, you take care of cattle, you go to the shamba a little before you can even think about going to school. So that's the kind of life I grew up in.
Oh, so you've primarily grown up in the village life?
I grew up in the village.
So when you grew up in the village, what are some of the inspirations you had? Because I know you're literally surrounded by the mountains and the abject poverty. What are some of the dreams you held being as a child?
Well, I really literally love to see people coming from the cities, coming there, and you look at the kind of life they're living, and like, one day I would really like to have this kind of life. And that is the inspiration that we always push ourselves to want to grow out of that village and emulate those people who
come from the city.
Yeah.
So it's important kila December twende ushago.
It's very
hata kama gari yako haya. Let's go inspire.
It inspires quite a bit, and that's the inspiration that I had. And of course, having grown up with that poverty, I hated it. It's not something that you grow up and you like. Of course, those who like it stay and are comfortable, but I hated it. So I always fought to make sure that I would get out of that life. And the only thing that I thought would help me get out of that is to get a proper education. Do my chores, yes, but get be very hardworking at school and make sure that I get out of that. So even when I was in class 6 and my dad and the headmaster proposed that I skipped class 7 and go to class 8. Yes.
You skipped.
Oh,
lucky you.
Well, I was elated because it was helping me get to my dreams faster.
Were you sharper or?
Oh yes, that's what they claimed. I wouldn't say that.
You're not tooting your own horn.
That's what they say because apparently I did so well in class 6. That my number 2, the range was too huge.
Yes.
And the headmaster thought, well, there's no reason to keep this guy here. Let's try him doing the class 7 exam as well. So I did, and apparently I was number 3. That's whole class 7, and I had never stepped in class 7. So they thought there's no reason to keep the guy.
So you went from class 6, you went to class 8.
I went straight to class 8. And after that, I went to high school.
High school, where did you go to?
Back in the village.
In the village?
Yeah, I stayed in Sigalame. Sigalame is one of the provincial schools that we used to call them provincial schools. It's one of the best provincial schools in Busia. So I literally, all my schooling life, stayed in the village.
Interesting. So, so after high school, so you've gone through all this abject poverty. You want to come out of this poverty. How did that step begin? Because I know it's anybody watching this is in the village, primarily is wondering, how do you come up from the village? It's very difficult.
Well, luckily I had, of course, things happened. My dad unfortunately died while I was in 4th form, so a lot of things changed. In fact, that's the first time I had a problem with school fees. Because my dad was a teacher, so he was able to take care of my school fees. But when after his death in the first term of high school, of 4th form, things got a bit difficult. And then, of course, now I could see life changing from what I had planned for to something that I wasn't going to be happy to. So that is the moment I started thinking of how do I plan my life to get out of this poverty. Because all of a sudden I was the firstborn of about 14 people.
14?
Yes.
Why? One dad, one mom?
No. My dad had 2 wives.
Polygamous.
Yes.
Oh, I get.
So,
but see, 14 alifanya kazi.
Exactly.
Any team ya football plus subs.
True story. In fact, that's what we used to say.
Yes.
So you see, I'm firstborn. I am 16 years because you realize I am finishing. I skipped, so I'm only 16.
Yes.
And now I'm all of a sudden I'm being asked to take care of 14 people.
What?
Yeah, so I had now to rethink. So after high school, I qualified for university.
Yeah.
But now I had to make decisions. Whether to go to university or go looking for something that would give me money ASAP.
Yes.
Because I had to take care of.
True.
I had 2 mothers to take care of.
Yeah.
I have.
Oh, you have 13 more children. Yeah, siblings. Yes.
Exactly. So that's when the decisions started.
Wow.
But generally, earlier, before then, even though my dad was a teacher, we realized we had a big family.
True.
So we had to, continue to try and help out in chores. And one of the chores was small businesses. We used to sell cigarettes, omena here and there, and we would supplement with changa, so that we can make ends meet. So you see, that I believe was my journey to business.
So your dad, trying to take over the business that dad was running back in the village.
No, but I was doing them even while he was alive. So when after school we would be selling changa. You would be selling some of the cigarettes here, omena there. So that was my journey from business, to start understanding business. Yeah. Because I now, in hindsight, I realized that's where I started honing my business skills.
Interesting. And so you've started doing the village back in the village. So at what particular point did you come to the city, and how did life transition? Because I believe it's difficult to sustain 13 siblings, 2 wives.
Well, once after high school, I had an uncle in the city. He was a doctor, and he asked that I come, and we decide on my future. So when I came in, he asked what I would want to do. I mean, would I want to go to university, and if I wanted something else. And several options came out, and I thought maybe let me do accounting. So I went to Strat. Strat was just an accounting calling then. So I came back with a catalog. Then thought about other colleges other than university, because now university I was seeing 4 years, and there's no guarantee of
getting a job at the end. Yeah.
Then when I came back, I thought about these colleges that I was trying to get to.
Yes.
But remembered that while in my last year I had a problem with school fees. How sure was I that this uncle or whoever or the relatives would then be able to pay the whole college fees? So I thought, no, I need to get something that would have no school fees and would guarantee me a job immediately. So when an offer came for the Norfolk, they had an entrepreneurship program to train chefs. I thought, why not?
Us.
Because then I was sure of a job.
Oh, because you'll go through the program and get a job.
And two, first of all, I was not going to have, they had offered a small stipend to take care of the fare and everything. So I thought this was God sent. Why? Because one, I was not going to be a burden to anyone. Two, in the hotel industry, there's always that extra pack of eating there. So
you don't turn it down.
So I thought this was a good choice. So I took that program, which is a 1 year program.
Yeah.
And of course, I put in my all.
Yes.
And I was lucky to be one of the people that were employed by the Norfolk immediately.
So what did you specialize in from the program?
Well, I specialized as a pastry chef.
Interesting.
Yes.
So from selling changa, now you're a pastry chef in the city.
Yes.
And you have a job.
Yes.
So at what particular point how long were you at Norfolk, and at what particular point did you decide now to transition into business?
Well, at the Norfolk, I stayed for 5 years, but during that time, I realized that the pay was not enough.
How much were you being paid then?
Well, my first salary was 1,480.
Which year was that?
1991. So, and
1,890.
And house allowance of 780 shillings.
In Mombasa Road.
No.
Oh,
it's like,
yes.
There's no, and you know, at that time we were paying rent about 500, 400 around there. So it was comfortable because fair, but really.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So that
you will sustain yourself.
I could sustain. In fact, I used to save quite a bit. Because I managed to save, and I created a saving culture from the very beginning. Even during the program, we used to be paid 400 shillings.
Yes.
I would save 200, and 200 is what I would use during the whole month, because that was enough for my fare. And of course, food was not an issue, because now I used to take my meals at the Norfolk. So I created a
saving culture,
a very strong saving culture from the beginning.
So how used to do it? So how would you save 200 shillings from 400 shillings? How would you survive?
Well, at some point when...
or what were your hacks for saving?
No.
Yeah.
The idea of saving came because I realized I needed to plan for something that would then help my siblings. Because I understood that in a few months or a few years, I would start carrying the burden, because now it's going to school, to high school, and I needed to be able to be ready for that.
So your siblings behind were an influence to this particular culture.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Yes.
All right. So you worked at Norfolk for 5 years. At what point now did you decide now it's time for me to cross over? And what triggered that?
Well, at the Norfolk, what happened is that I moved. We started moving, and the culture in the hospitality industry is that the more you moved within hotels, the more you gain a better salary.
Yes.
So I actually moved from the Norfolk, moved to Safari Park Hotel. Then I was poached from Safari Park, went to Nyali Beach. Now I'm as a senior manager. Then got from Nyali Beach, and I realized Mombasa was a bit too slow for me.
Yes.
And then I thought I wanted to come back to Nairobi, so I came back to Sarova. So while at Sarova, I thought it was time. Because I had done quite a bit. I had gotten enough experience in terms of management skills, in terms of understanding product. So I thought it was high time that I left. But whilst working, I had started buying equipment. Some equipment.
So those are pastry equipment?
Yeah, pastry equipment. So I used to do a bit of business here and there. I had my own, a few
side hustles,
Yes, so that I would do that to supplement what I to my salary and everything else.
Interesting. And at what point did you see now it's enough for me now to transition? Because I know there's a lot of people watching this. I'm employed, but I have my side hustle. But at what point do you cross over now to say that you're going to do this?
Well,
or you had enough savings because you're saving?
No, there's never enough. There's never enough. So what happened is that at some point I took up a loan from the circle, and teamed up with another friend who also was a hotelier, and we opened up a cake shop. But what I noticed, and I learned quite a bit of mistakes that we did, was that we would put in someone to run the place for us because we were
all employed, yes.
And things would happen that customers would come and decisions would not be made, and because they had to wait for us to come in and make the decisions.
Yes.
So I lost a chunk of capital because I was not there to make decisions.
Oh, because when they're calling you, you're in the kitchen, you can't pick it.
And then you realize you think you asked someone to come to work.
True.
This person decided not to open the shop that
and you didn't know.
And you have no idea. You're coming back from work in the afternoon, and you realize the place was never open. So we lost quite a bit. And from there, I realized that what you learn from every time a business goes down, that one, the business needs you, because you are the only one who has the pain of what you put in.
True.
So I learned those lessons, and I told myself that when time comes, when I think I want to run another slightly bigger business, I want to be there myself. Yes.
Interesting. So you decided now to take a hold of the business yourself.
So after I came from the coast, I stayed for about a year or two, and then decided it was time. Well, I met a friend who lived in the UK, and she'd come in to visit, and she said, okay, she was in a position to secure some funds, and what were we able to do together? Because she's a person we had known each other for years. Yeah. I told her the best I knew is what I know, which is cakes.
Yes.
And pastries. So this is the only thing I know. And she said, then okay, if you are willing, then I would be willing to put in some cash. You whatever you have, we put it in. We put it in. So I told her, you know what? The best I will do, I'm going to sacrifice my job, and I'll put the little that I have in that business, and you put in the rest. And we formed a company, and we started off a pastry shop.
Interesting. So she invested into the business.
Yes, she invested.
So that's the pastry shop, or that's when the restaurant came into place? That's the pastry shop.
That's the pastry shop.
All right.
So we ran this pastry shop for a year or two, and then we have disagreements. Because interestingly, one thing again I learned from partnerships is that people come into different businesses with different
interests. Yes, yeah.
And my interests and her interests did not align.
Yes.
So we had a serious disagreements, and I thought it was time for me to get out and start off on my own. That's how again I went. In fact, I came from an open cake shop to a kitchen. So what I did is that I just took the little money that I got from that separation, opened up a kitchen, and then I had already realized there was a gap in the market at that point, where several restaurants did not have bakeries. So what they needed to sell pastries, but they did not have good quality bakeries within their establishments. So what I offered them was, I'm going to give you these pastries at a subsidized price, at a very good price, so that you can resell. So that's how I opened up a kitchen instead of a cake shop, because I did not have enough funds
to do it.
I started opening a cake shop.
Interesting. So we're going to take a short commercial break and just find out how this particular transition happened. So from Budalangi to Nairobi to setting up a business to breaking down, now to being back in the kitchen. What an interesting turn of events. We're going to just find out how exactly now has he managed to now group this particular business to where exactly it is. So see you after the break. So welcome back to the show. Before we went on a break, it was quite an interesting tale of events that Obado has had to go through, from growing up in Budalangi with the floods and all, but alituambia alikuwa juu ya mlima, to coming to Nairobi, to getting into employment, getting out of employment. Now you fell out with your partner. So you started up with the kitchen. So how did you now transition from the kitchen to now setting up the Café Deli chain of restaurants? Because it's such an interesting story.
Well, I think making that decision to go by the kitchen way really helped, because I was able to reduce all my costs.
So the kitchen you're operating from home?
No.
Or you hired a small kitchen?
I hired a small kitchen in Westlands. So again, one of the things that most people do wrong is to try and run businesses from their homes, because it doesn't give you the
experience.
Not really the experience, but you know, customers want to to give you the respect, and you're not respected when you're doing things from home.
True.
Customers would like to come to your business premises. You have to show that you're ready for business. So you have to incur that extra cost. Trying to reduce cost and to say you're starting from doing things from your backyard doesn't necessarily help you get out there very fast. So I said I had a vision immediately and thought, you know what, I want to grow this thing big.
Yes.
And to do that, I have to build up a foundation.
True.
So building that foundation meant that I had to incur certain cost. So I took up a space, put up a kitchen, and started creating awareness to my clients, the targeted clients who are, of course, the restaurants that did not have bakeries. Yeah. So, you know, you want these people to come to your premises to visit,
experience, yes,
and you know, see what you are able to do. So you can't ask them to come to your home. So that's how I started.
At home ni Dandora utakujaje?
No, by the time I was getting middle class
Interesting. So you have this interesting story of how exactly now Café Deli, the opportunity came to be, and how you came to acquire this particular failing restaurant. Maybe you can just briefly take us through how this opportunity came to be and the courage you took in order for you to go bold on this particular dream that you had.
Yeah. So after with the kitchen, the kitchen allowed me to save some money. That I ended up opening up a small shop at the front. Yeah. So that then allowed for me to be able to be visible. But beyond that, what happened is that one of the restaurants that I used to supply to wanted to sell. And I decided to approach them and, you know, bid. Of course, I didn't have enough money. Yes. But I saw an opportunity, but also realized that if I lost this business, it was one of my biggest plans. Yes. So I thought if I lost this business, I would, you know, lose quite a bit. So I decided to just bid, and I knew anyway if I bidded and lost, what? So there's nothing to lose anyway. Yes. So I went there and they were asking for, I remember, 18 million. And of course, account yangu ile naangalia niko na 40k 18 million na 40k azigani. But I said okay, wacha to negotiate. So I negotiated.
Serious negotiation bila pesa.
No, it's not a door at all. I didn't have any money. But I thought I have nothing to lose. Yes. Let me negotiate. We agree on a price, and then from there
you'll figure it out.
Let me figure it out from there. Yes. Hautanifunga kwa sababu ni negotiate.
Na ufungongi kubageni bure. Kulipa ndio pesa.
Kulipa ndio dama. So we negotiated and we agreed on a 14 million price. After serious negotiation. Yeah. Serious negotiation. And you know, I'm talking millions. Yes. Million is about millions. Sijai shika milioni hivi. I was like, okay, fine, no problem. I left there and, of course, went straight to my bank manager. I've got an opportunity here. I know exactly what I'm going to do to change this place. I'm going to make money, So, the boot of that in Patido. I remember the manager looked at me, then she went into her computer, angalia account yangu. I remember now, the best. The enemy nimejaribu sana. The best I can give you from this account. That's the best. So I don't know you I was so disappointed. So nikaanza kutembea nikitafuta guys who could be able to help. Of course, now I thought the best thing to do was to probably try any other banks. So the banks, of course, give me the same story. All of them just were like, you know what? The structures that we built have not reached a point where we can sustain this kind of loan. And therefore, we cannot be able. So I decided, okay, what will I do? So I went to of course, now at that time, because of the business I had done, I had made some friends. Some of them were clients who I thought were high net worth. So I went to them and said, you know what, this business, I explained. So in the midst of explaining, I got a guy who told me, I think I believe in this story. But personally, I don't have the money. So I'm going to send you to a place. If you are able to explain this thing the way you have explained to me, I think we might listen. So what I tell people is that when you want to do a business, what you need to do is to believe in the idea. So much that you can sell it to anyone. That because you know what? You are looking for someone's money.
True.
So you have to believe in the thing yourself first. And believe that it's actually going to work.
True.
And the interesting thing about communication is that when you actually believe in something, people actually are able to know that you actually believe in it.
True.
So the non-verbals are usually say much. If you don't believe in something and you're telling me about a story, I'm like, this guy doesn't. He's trying to chase me here. But I actually believed in what I was going to do and how I was going to turn around the business. So when I went to this private equity fund, I remember walking in, and of course, the lady at the reception looked at me and was like, okay, but I just said, you know what, I have a business I want to invest in. Please get me an investment manager. I want to talk to one. She was like, okay, look at us. We got the guy to come. So I remember sitting with the guy, starting my story, and halfway the story was like, stop right there. Give me 2 minutes. He came back with his boss. So the boss came, sat with me, and said, I'm a storyteller. So I gave the story, explained what I wanted to do, how I was going to turn around the business, what I had already done, my skills and everything. Like, I think this one we can invest in. And that's how I ended up getting an investor.
Wow, interesting. Yes. And maybe from you, because I know you're in an era whereby there's a lot of capital investment coming into so many different businesses. From your experience in terms of seeking capital and maybe pitching for, venture capital, what are some of the things that you learned through that particular experience? And some of the experience, I'm sure you've also had other experiences after that.
Well, the most important lesson that came from that first experience was the fact that where most businesses are not ready for capital investments. And I was not ready to. The only thing I had with me was passion and belief in what I wanted to do. That's what I had with me. And I was lucky to have gotten a private equity fund that was willing to walk the journey with me. So in fact, once we had that discussion, they asked that I do my profit and loss account, all the accounting. And I was like, you guys, don't you realize I'm a chef and not an accountant? How am I supposed to do this? So they said, no, we will walk the journey with you. So they trained me from that. So they trained me how to make the right accounting figures that would be sent to their board and everything. So there's need for training for that particular
aspect of the business,
expectation, because there's a language they understand, and that language is missing in most small businesses. Because we don't keep our records right, and then the way we do keep it is not what the language that they understand. So that is what I learned at that time, and it took longer to get that money, because now I had to be trained through that process.
Interesting. So in terms of, so you got this this investment, you're able to set up Café Deli. So in terms of the journey, at what particular point did you now decide, like, I want to open up, to expand from where exactly it's set up? I presume the first branch was at Moi Avenue.
Yes.
Yes. So at what particular point did you decide now to expand? What are some of the metrics that you used to say that it's my time to expand?
Well, interestingly, what happened is that I exceeded the expectations that we had projected in the first pitch. We had agreed that I would be paying them about 300,000 per month, and within the first 2 months, I was able to pay them 500.
Oh.
And then in a few months later, I was able to pay them 600 per month instead of 300,000. Yes. So you see now, within a very short time, I was able to pay off the loans. And you know, these guys are in business. They are in the business of selling money.
Yes.
They don't want you to be sending, giving back their money. They want you to stay with their money slightly longer so that they can make more money.
Yes.
So they approach. They are the people who approached me again. 1 year before I cleared the other. They were like, "Would you like to you know, get something else? Because it looks like this model is working. Can you probably get another and probably find something that is similar that we can put money in?" And that's exactly what I did. I looked around and found another business that was in distress, and
you bought up.
They bankrolled it.
Interesting.
Yes.
And in terms of, because it seems very easy to say it, but in terms of implementing it, you've done it and implemented it successful. What are the right things that you did in order for you to grow the business? What's it called? For one business to make it work, what are the right things that you did to make it work? Because we're in Nairobi, a city whereby restaurants closing every other month. There's a business that's shutting down. Well, what did you do right?
Yeah, what happened is that there are certain professional rules of business that are bandied around by people. But when you get into business, people don't actually follow it. So one of the things is that I avoid family in my business. And that's something that we are told, that when you're doing business, don't put family. Because the way the family view business and the way professionals view business is different. So one of the first things that I did is to make sure that I had the right people, the right labor mix. Because again, the private equity people also were interested in making sure that the thing works.
Yes.
So they also had their rules and said, you know what, we are going to have to make sure that you get the right people with the right jobs. So like an accountant, we're going to have an accountant. All of a sudden now we was going to be forced to get an accountant. And we are not going to just get an accountant, we're going to get a
qualified accountant. Yes.
So I started having the right people. I got the right general manager. I got the right people in the kitchen. Now it was all, we started with professionalizing the place. And the moment we did that, we were able to retain customers. We were able to market well and gain that traction that was required for the business. Interesting.
And so Café Deli has literally grown up in terms of market, and I'm sure also the other day you just expanded to Ngong Road. Yes. As an entrepreneur and running this business that I've been at it a while, in terms of the restaurant business, how do you determine location? Because location is such a key thing. What are some of the metrics you look at in terms of setting up the right restaurant at the right place, offering the right value? What exactly are some of the things that you look into?
Well, the most important thing is understanding who your clientele is. If you're a mass producer of a product.
How would you define Café Deli? Who do you target?
I target the lower middle class. And I know where they reside. I know I put my businesses where they are able to reach. Because I wouldn't put my Café Deli in a place where I feel, like for example, I wouldn't take it to Dandora. As much as I love Dandora because of where I come from. They will not even afford the tea. Yeah.
They'll steal the tea.
Yes. So it's about understanding who your clientele is. And once you understand who your clientele is, it's very easy to then look for locations where they are. Because now us coming to Ngong Road is taking the clientele, the product to the client. And of course the clients are also very easy to talk to because they tell you what they want. They tell you this is where we are and this is where this is what we would like you to do. So we've had quite a number of clients asking us to go to Mombasa, go to Kisumu, but you have to be very careful in the expansion because that has also brought down a lot of business because you don't build enough capacity to be able to sustain the expansion.
Interesting. And in terms of the expansion, maybe what are some of the things, probably just from your experience, because right now it looks like everybody sees Café Deli, it's very successful, it's going quite well, Obado is doing quite well, but what's the darkest period you've gone through in the journey of business?
Well, Café Deli has gone through dark sides a lot of times. But
because we never see the dark side.
Oh, of course.
You're opening. Everything's looking quite nice on your stage.
What happens is that we try to cover that behind the scenes. But Café Deli has gone through a very dark time, especially during the COVID era.
Yes.
When it was very bad when we had to, to sit down with staff and ask them to have a pay cut and sit down with them and ask them to stay at home because the businesses were actually closed, and having not to be able to give them even a stipend because we gave very little to just keep them alive.
Yes.
But it was a very dark time, and then coming out of COVID, and then these guys are coming. They have had several debts they have incurred. I remember quite a number were auctioned because they could not pay rent and other kind.
Not the staff.
Yeah, the staff. Yes. So it was a very bad time, and for the business it was also very difficult because at some point we almost got auctioned. Yes, it was really, really tough, and it's been a very long journey from COVID, and I cannot tell you that we have already gone past it. Yes. No. We're still struggling to get out of that.
And how do you keep sanity?
Well, what we do is what I've always done is talk to the staff anytime. I do not keep information to myself. I talk to them. I sit them down and tell them. Like, for example...
So you talk to every staff, just not the managers?
No. I talk to the managers and I make sure that all the staff understand what is happening. Because, like, for example, the finance bill, I've actually called a meeting and I've actually talked to the staff and told them, you know what, this is how this thing is going to affect you. And this is the repercussions. Because they are the part of the journey.
Yeah.
And when we train them, we train them everything, so that they are part of the vision to drive the vision. Because you cannot do this thing alone. So one of the things, that's how we have been able to survive. Because they say, if you don't want to get into depression, they will be able to talk about your issues. Yeah. So I have a family in terms of my staff. So I talk to them.
Interesting. And because that's a very interesting approach, considering most entrepreneurs just want to keep it by yourself and probably just to your managers and the team. And in terms of, what's it called, because you mentioned during COVID, but despite the hardship during COVID, you decided to also open a branch during COVID. Was that not insanity? Because you're facing a difficult period, yes, but you also opened a branch during COVID. Why was that? Because you're facing being auctioned, but you're still here trying to push this dream. Or entrepreneurship is just insanity.
It's just risk and more risk.
Yes.
Well, what happens is that, interestingly, during the hard times, that is when opportunities come. And when these opportunities come, if you don't take them, they're gone. So you have to, weigh and see whether you are able to pick up an opportunity during when it presents itself. Yeah. Yes.
Interesting. And in terms of, what's it called, because you've been an entrepreneur for quite a while, maybe what are some of the interesting lessons that you've learned from your journey in terms of just looking back? What do you think you did right and what exactly do you think you did wrong in terms to enable you to be where you are? Because I think life it's always about learning from your successes and being able to keep on your successes. What exactly do you think you did actually right to enable you maintain this? Because it's been quite a while that you've been in business.
Well, I've made very many mistakes. And I've learned from those mistakes. In fact, one of the biggest mistakes I ever made was to rush and open the third branch because it was a very expensive branch at the Kenyatta Avenue, and it never got to the expectations. The fact is, we put in so much money to try and get out there to be visible and everything, and every projection showed that we were going to get there, but somehow the economy started slowing, and we never got to where we wanted. So what happened is that the negotiations were wrong.
Negotiations for
the space. The negotiations for the space was wrong. The recruitment, a bit of it was a bit wrong. So we ended up with so many wrongs that eventually made that business not viable. And I realized that what happens is when you start, when a business starts succeeding, there's an excitement that comes into the business person, and you start forgetting the right principles that you are supposed to use while negotiating. So I was too excited, and you know, the first one had done so well. The second one did so well, and you know, these guys have come back and said, you know what, we are willing to bankroll you again. So I was like, okay, now I think I've gotten the mojo. So I am getting into this new negotiation, and the guy is a shark. He realizes that this guy
has money and he's
excited. Yeah, and he's excited. So, you know, I'm willing to sign anything.
10 million fine.
Oh, yes, I made serious. In fact, one of the biggest mistakes I ever did was to pay off a very huge goodwill for a business that was non-existent. You know, goodwill is supposed to be a going concern.
Yes.
But here I was buying space and paying millions for space that was formerly a casino.
Wow.
What goodwill was I buying?
Nothing.
So those are huge mistakes that I did that I wouldn't do today. Anytime someone comes and tells me goodwill, I will tell them, forget about it. Bye-bye.
Interesting. So before we even get to end up, so in 90 seconds I have 10 questions. So I want you just, it's a quick fire. So say whatever that comes to your mind after I ask the question. So the first question, what is the one thing that you regret spending money on?
Goodwill.
If you could be transformed into one animal, which one would you choose? Useme kuku.
Fox.
What is your hidden talent?
Wow. I wouldn't know.
Money or happiness?
Oh, happiness, for sure.
Salty or sweet?
Sweet.
Are you more of an introvert or an extrovert?
Oh, extrovert.
Sure. Will you travel in the past or in the future?
Future.
Are you more of a thinker or a doer?
Doer.
What do you think the meaning of life is?
Change the environment.
Yeah. It's a difficult question.
It's a very difficult question.
But I appreciate Fami coming to the show, and all the best in the expansion for Café Deli. So if you're watching this particular show, you can get to access Café Deli. It's across Nairobi on Moi Avenue, behind Kencom, Koinange Street, it's all over, and right now even on Ngong Road, so you can also get to access Café Deli, and you can also get to see Obado Obadoh on social media. Is always very accessible. If you're trying to run a business, it's always very ready to share. Thanks so much to Capital Club who have enabled us to have this particular show right here. At the Capital Club is the place you need to be as an entrepreneur. At the Capital Club, you have access to so many different particular meeting rooms, so many different facilities, including the spa, the gym, event space. There's so much right here at the Capital Club. My name is Ian Dennis. You can find me all across social media at Ian Dennis Network. Thanks so much for watching The Late Night Business. Until next time, I'll see you right here on KTN Home.